Hello and welcome to episode 77 of Retro Encounter, the RPG Fan Off-Topic Weekly Podcast. My name is Mike Sollosi, and today we are very, very excited to talk all about one of my personal favorite PS2 games, Persona 3. Now, we're doing this for a couple of reasons. Chief among them being Persona 5 is out right now, or at least at the time, if you're listening to this podcast, it is out right now. And also because I had a lot of fun recording the Persona 4 episode last year and kind of wanted to do a similar thing for 3. Anyway, I'm here with two luminaries of RPG fan to talk about the game with me. First among them, Robert Fenner.
I'm just wondering if the dark hour accounts for daylight savings time.
You know, that's a great question, because recording the episodes this weekend, I was very confused by a lot of daylight savings time.
We both threw it off.
Yeah, because in the UK, it's 2 weeks after it happens in the US, and in the state where Derek Heemsbergen resides is the one state in the US that does not follow it. So I had
for real?
Yeah, so I had a lot. So scheduling that episode and the episode with Derek was this episode and the episode with Derek. I was just so confused between UK daylight savings, Arizona daylight savings, East Coast daylight savings, and it literally changed from Saturday to Sunday. All right, but I don't know how the dark hour figures into that, but maybe we can figure out with Robert and also Alana Hagues.
Hello. Yeah, I wish we'd have like an extra hour rather than just push it forward. What's more confusing is that you guys get daylight saving time 2 weeks before us, but then when your clocks go back, they go back like 2 weeks before us as well, so you have a weird summer.
I wonder if when the clocks spring back or spring ahead, like the shadows come out at 11 p.m. instead.
Yeah, maybe.
I just remembered that Japan doesn't have daylight savings time, so I think that's ruined my joke.
Oh.
Well, one of us will have to conduct shady experiments with an evil being from the Cthulhu mythos just on our own.
Let's make it happen.
Europe or North America, either way. So anyway, we're going to talk about Persona 3 tonight. If it wasn't already obvious, we're going to spoil the hell out of this game as we discuss it in detail. And because it's completely unreasonable to ask anyone to play Persona 3 in a month, that thing is 80 plus hours if you're going in without a New Game Plus. So we're going to have just a special separate episode for it instead of having the regular two-parter. Because any game that's over 70 hours, it's just unreasonable to ask that of a person. So today's a special bonus round all about Persona 3. I have Alana and Robert here to talk about it with me. So where to begin, fellas? Persona 3 is a long, involved game that made an incredible splash when it hit international RPG players. So I guess starting with Robert, I know you've told me off recording several times about your background with the Persona series, but can you give us an abridged version of how much you like Persona and SMT and how you went into Persona 3?
Oh, I love Persona a great deal. I played that first game, the Revelations version of Persona 1, back when it was new, and did my best to overcome its arcane and, frankly, horrible systems to just, dive into that world and enjoy its rich soundtrack and unusual setting. The Persona 2 duology, it wasn't available completely in English for a long time, but Eternal Punishment really spoke to me when I was about 16 when that game came out, and seeing this sort of subculture outsider take on being in Japanese society and dealing with a demon summoning apocalypse at the same time, I found very exciting. But Persona 3 was a really big surprise, because Persona 2 Eternal Punishment was its ending was very final, and shortly after it came out, Kazuma Kaneko and Koji Okada gave an interview where they were saying that they were happy with Persona, but it was over. They were putting a lid on it, and they wanted to move on to other things. And they kind of hinted at doing the Raido series, which wouldn't come around for another 6 or 7 years.
But the Persona 3 team, the Soejima et al., that's basically new blood. That was...
Well, kind of. Like, a lot of those guys, they worked as colorists and programmers on Persona 1 and 2.
Right, yeah.
Sojima in particular, he did like color correction on Kaneko's portraits.
And the main producer for the game, I feel bad for forgetting his name. You probably got
Hashino?
Yeah, Hashino. Yeah, Hashino was
he's a fairly new guy.
Yeah, he was a fairly new guy, but he does have credits in Nocturne and in some of their other older games as a programmer or script.
That's right.
I mean, maybe this is my perception of it, but I think of like the Kaneko team and the Soejima team as sort of being just different chapters of the Persona.
Oh yeah. Well, in the same way that Persona 1 and 2 were set in a different universe than 3 and 4. It kind of seems like well,
Persona 2 characters do make very, very minor appearances in 3.
Well, the world ends. The world ends.
Well, okay, the world resets and then it ends.
Yeah. It's yeah, you can see it as separate continuums by different teams with different design philosophies. But as I was saying, when Persona 3 was announced, everybody was like, "Whoa, that's come out of nowhere. That's really exciting." And the world was kind of set ablaze by it. Not as much as it wasn't as popular in the West as it is now, but that was a really big deal for fans of the series and myself included. And it's actually kind of funny thinking about it now that there's a longer gap between Persona 4 and 5 than there was between the series ending and then being restarted between 2 and 3.
Yeah, 6 years versus almost 9 years.
Yeah, but 3 kind of reinvented the wheel, and it codified Persona into the format that it's in now. Maybe a little bit rougher than the latest entries have been, but the framework is there, and you can see that it's been reinvented as this sort of more kind of young adult fiction oriented / school simulation, maybe kind of virtual tourism.
Yeah, I mean, Persona 3 does share a thread with the older Persona games, because I think you can basically break down almost all of them as a otherwise normal modern Japanese town starts having unusual supernatural happenings, and then it spins off into a, near apocalypse and a struggle of nihilism versus the human spirit.
Yeah, those first 2 games, or the first 3 games that made up the first 2 entries, they're much more in line with mainline SMT in terms of what's happening, whereas 3 and 4 and now 5 is more of this. There's an ordinary world, and then there's hidden things happening, beyond the veil that nobody else can see. Which strikes me as a very more sort of young adult fiction oriented.
Yes, yeah. The demons are in the real world, and are very much part of everything happening in Sumaru in Persona 2 at least. I'm much more familiar with Persona 2 than Persona 1.
Mm-hmm. Same kind of deal. Demons have been brought in through a portal in Persona 1. So.
Right, okay. But no, yeah, but you're all right. Persona 3, 4, and I think also 5 have a sort of, there's another world where the demons are, and the young people are the only ones that know about it, and the only ones that can stop it. Where in Persona
seems
2,
much more allegorical.
Yeah, exactly. And in Persona 2, at least, I mean, demons are invading the real world and killing people. There's sort of more real world involvement in those games. But again, it's different creative teams. And naturally they would have different things. And you're absolutely right. Persona 3 started the framework for what Persona 4 is and what Persona 5 will be soon worldwide. But ultimately, I do think it goes back to that core tenet, a place that seems like it could be a real town in Japan with supernatural things happening. And ultimately, it's almost always about, like, do humans want to destroy themselves or do humans want to survive? Is sort of the answer to the question in Persona. In I think every Persona game, at least when you frame it as if you frame it as Nyarlathotep versus Philemon in the original ones, and then what Nyx is doing and what the final boss of Persona 4 is doing in those 2 games. But that maybe I'm looking a little too deeply into it.
Philemon wasn't exactly innocent. Let's put it that way.
Right.
Whereas 3, 4, and now 5, they kind of seem like there's a little bit more of like a what it means to be a good person as the crux of those games that I think was kind of absent in the first couple. But that's just me. You might disagree.
Well, yeah, okay. We probably won't reach a meaningful conclusion on that thread. There's still a lot to talk about Persona 3. Alana, how did you get into the series exactly?
You two have scared me. Like, you know so much. Oh my goodness, I'm a relative newbie to Persona, so I
Well,
did
that's
try and so I did try and play 3 FES back when it came out, maybe about a year or two afterwards. I really couldn't get into it, and also tried to get into, on a side, SMT3 Nocturne, which is brutal, and it's probably scared me a little bit off of the series, but 2 years ago I got PS Vita and picked up Persona 4 Golden for quite cheap. Played through it, really enjoyed it, and thought, let's give Persona 3 another go because it's on PSN for really cheap. And probably for about a month to 2 months, I played that game solidly, and it sort of fell at a really poignant and particular time in my life where a lot of my feelings and a lot of things going around me had kind of lined up with the game. So a lot of Persona 3 deals with death and grief and how to kind of grieve in some way. It came at a time where I was going through similar, almost like late teenage, like young adult feelings of kind of like, how do I process these feelings and everything? And the game just really clicked poignantly. So like Persona 4 is like the perfect, like technical Persona game so far. 5 may be changing that. As of recording, I'm not playing it, sadly. But
I should mention, as of recording, Persona 5 is not out yet in the West. But when this episode gets posted, I think it will have.
When I went back to play 3, obviously there was a bit of rewinding to do. But I think playing 4 helped because I knew how to play, and it was more about enjoying the story and enjoying more of the other aspects of the game than 4, and overall I prefer 3 to 4 largely because, quote unquote, it's a lot darker, to be like really cliche about it, but I like a lot more about it. It's probably my favourite PS2 RPG at the moment.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean there's a couple of others. I would have swapped it around with the one we played earlier in the year, but my feelings have changed on that a little bit after playing it. So, yeah, Persona 3 really clicked. It's one of the games I really struggled to say, do you know, I really like it, because it was just the right time. It was the right game at the right time, and it just worked for me, personally, more than 4. I completely get why people love 4 a lot, and having listened to the 4 episode, it's accessible.
That was sweet of you, thanks.
It's way more accessible. Like, from what I get, Persona 3 and 4 are a lot more accessible than 1, and especially 1, but maybe even 2 slightly.
Oh, definitely.
Which is sad, because I really want to play 2, so the original plan was to play 4, 3, and then play Innocent Sin, Eternal Punishment, and then 1, but things happened, and now 5's coming out, so yeah, I'm really excited to dig into the series more, and 3 is a really special game for me, I think, and I really love it. So, really excited to talk about it.
Right
it's really nice to hear.
Now, I apologize. I think I've mentioned this on other episodes, but my brief Persona history was I rented Persona 1 many years ago, a few years after it came out, and absolutely hated it, mostly for mechanical reasons. I thought the combat was awful, the fusion was awful, I didn't totally understand what was going on in the story. I still don't like that game. So, Alana, your plan to play them in reverse, like Innocent Sin, Eternal Punishment, then 1, I think it's a great plan if you just remove 1 from the equation.
Oh, yeah.
It's only 15 hours long.
Exactly. I can cope with iffy gameplay 15 hours. I've played games with poor mechanics for longer than that and dealt with them, so maybe not poor, but I think Persona 1, it would be nice to see where the series started, and if I play it for 5 hours and go, not really my thing, then that's fine, but I own it already, so I've got to play it.
I can't defend that game, but I think that Persona 2, both of them are really cool. I tried playing Eternal Punishment in, I think, the mid-2000s, probably in the 03-04 range, because I found a copy cheap and bought it because I thought it was a rare PS1 game, and played it and decided, okay, this is definitely better than Persona 1, but I still don't really know what's going on. So I moved on to other things. And because of that confusion and distaste for 1, I sort of thought, Persona's not for me, I guess. So when Persona 3 got a lot of positive buzz, even among a lot of my close friends who insisted I should try to play it, I basically ignored them until I got Persona 3 FES as a gift in, I don't know, I think 08 or 09. And then I ended up playing it to clear out backlog, because I was trying to clear out backlog in 2010 or 2011, and really, really liked it and became Persona obsessed. And now I've played 3 and 4 a bunch of times, and I've played Persona 2 Innocent Sin, but haven't gotten very far in Eternal Punishment yet. I still want to revisit that game eventually.
It's pretty special for, I mean, among many of its features that I would champion, for being, like, to this day, the sole Persona entry in which you control a group of adults.
Right. No,
Yeah.
a lot of it intrigues me, and I want to go back to it. It's just, it confused me, because I didn't know anything about Shin Megami Tensei at all when I tried playing Persona 1 and Persona 2 in the early 2000s.
Well, they kind of tried to hide it back then, didn't they? So.
Yeah.
No, but now I'm absolutely into it, and would go in there with the right mindset and with a good set of expectations. I played Innocent Sin and liked it a lot. The ending is just heartbreaking in Innocent Sin. Alana, you are going to cry when you see the last cutscene of that game.
I cried at both the enders of 3 and 4 as well, so I'm really not surprised.
That's also justified, but it brought tears to my eyes seeing that final cutscene. Persona 2 Innocent Sin is a really good game. But I am interested in eventually playing Eternal Punishment. I don't know exactly when it'll happen. But, Alana, your comments earlier about how Persona 4 is more accessible and a little bit more mechanically refined than 3, I agree with those comments, and those contribute to why I prefer 4 over 3 ultimately. Maybe it's because, I don't know, maybe I just like Scooby-Doo, but I think that the more lighthearted tone of Persona 4 is very successful. I like how the content and nature of the dungeons are more attached to the story and characters than 3.
Yeah.
3 is. A couple other things like that, but it is impossible to deny that Persona 3 is excellent, and also was the sort of foundational change to the Persona formula that is going to be carried through to new games. I mean, Persona 3's DNA is definitely very, very present in 4 and 5, and I like Persona 3 a lot. But where to begin from here? One thing that I think Robert and I touched on it a little bit a second ago, and I think is maybe worth exploring. In all of the Persona games, probably including 1, but I don't know as much about that one, the city that they're in is almost a character in itself. Because
I would agree, yeah.
Yeah.
Sumaru in 2, Inaba in 4, that particular slice of Tokyo in 5, and Tatsumi Port Island in Persona 3, all are very distinct settings that are very important parts of those games. So
they're quite, I mean, with the exception of Persona 5, they're kind of like contemporary Japan settings that you don't often see. I mean, Sumaru is basically like a Neo-Tokyo, but the smaller town in the Kagecho in the first game, Tatsumi Port Island feels kind of a little bit like Portopia or like Kobe, which, you know, outside of Snatcher and Portopia's serial murders, it's sort of an untapped, different urban environment that we don't usually get to see. So it's a very special one, I feel.
I mean, Inaba in 4 is a clear, you know, has a place clear within the Japanese countryside. And Tatsumi Port Island, they even mention in the game, the school and the island were built by the Kirijo Corporation. So it's a very specific view of Japan that is shiny and modern and new, which is, you know, not an accurate view of all of Japan, of course. It feels like a very crafted city, even as you're playing through it. In a way that I didn't feel in Sumaru or Inaba, but like it's big and modern and shiny, but also very Japanese, and felt like, I think you mentioned earlier, Robert, felt like virtual tourism for most of the game, because you're staying in that city and seeing every corner of that city over a 70+ hour playtime. And I
wish there were a few more places to go, but I really enjoyed my time in Tatsumi Port City.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also I'm a little bothered that it seems big, but there's only specific parts you can go.
Yeah.
Persona 4, you feel like you go through every corner of Inaba.
Coming off the back of Persona 2, which opens up a different district of the city every few plot beats, you know, seeing that just everything was open from the beginning in Persona 3, and they really equated to just maybe 1 or 2 screens. I felt like, oh, it's a little bit small, but I still liked it.
Yeah, definitely.
Like in Gekkoukan High School, you can only go to the main floor and the floor where the second year students are. where in
Yeah.
in Yasogami High School in 4, you could go to every floor of the school. Just little things like that made Tatsumi Port Island seem incomplete, but I think that the setting and is sort of a vital part of a Persona game, maybe even more so than other RPGs where are maybe less dense but more broad in terms of the space you explore.
There are a couple of areas that you get to visit in the Dark Hour exclusively, which is really cool, and it's nice to see. One of them's a hotel, isn't it? I think I remember the hotel.
The Love
one's
Hotel.
The one I always remember. That's right. I wonder why I'd always remember that one.
There's a great bit where you're running along the monorail tracks as well, if I remember,
That's
under
right.
the moonlight.
Yeah, that's the first one.
Yeah, you fight all of the Arcana shadows in order. So you fight Priestess on the railroad tracks, and then a couple stages later you fight Hierophant and Lovers in the Love Hotel.
Yeah, that's right. I like those little bits. They're just like little snippets. But otherwise, yeah, compared to Inara, it does feel a bit smaller. Not too fast. I think there's enough there to do. Like, I think the only thing that really changes is when you get to the second half of the game, the secret month of January, where everything, the entire character, like we were talking about the island as a character, well, I mean, the entire city shifts into some kind of base for cult, which basically is worshipping the end of the world, and the entire mood of the entire island just dips down, and you can really feel in that really tight sect that something's gonna happen.
You're absolutely right, but let's back up a little bit.
Yeah,
we
definitely.
should mention that Persona 3 was the Persona game that started the trend of being a student living through a year of high school as the basic framework for the plot. So you're going day to day through a school year from April to January, and you balance your schoolwork and your school life with fighting shadows and demons. And so, like when Alana was talking about the secret month of January, it's when you discover the exact happenings of this end of the world plot. The last part of the game is going through January, waiting to confront this end of the world threatening monster, and as that's happening, an evil cult, that starts out as terrorists, some bad people getting in your way, and they eventually become a sort of a powerful cultist group. So yeah, Persona 3 was the game that started that whole calendar-based gameplay and the conversation systems that you engage with a bunch of your friends and classmates that gets compared to a dating sim often. That was something not present in Persona 1 or 2. That's very much a part of 3, 4, and 5.
Minimal presence in Innocent Sin. There's some.
Yeah,
that allows you to partner up at the end, but no, not nearly in the same way as like the kind of Tokimeki Memorial-esque character building and relationship building that you see in 3.
At the end of Innocent Sin, you can choose which party member you like the most at one conversation at the very end of the game. But that doesn't count. That's not really a dating sim.
Hey, well, it changes your demon contact.
It does. Persona 2 is good for people. We should just do a Persona 2 episode one of these days. Maybe next year. I think we only can do one Persona episode a year. Yeah. So next year we can do a Persona 2 episode, Robert.
Right on.
I'll
be there.
That gives you a full year to play it, Alana, or at least play Innocent Sin.
Good. I want to do that.
So, the one thing that I think is a strength of that calendar dating sim system is that it gives players a degree of freedom by choosing who they hang out with, and what order and what class activities they participate in, and the choices that they make in their day-to-day life, basically lets the player shape the narrative in a way. And of course, there's ways to try to talk to everyone and get a max playthrough. But if a player's going in cold, the experience of Persona 3 will be shaped by what they choose to do and who they interact with in the game. And that feels powerful when you're in it and playing it for the first time. And as such, you meet a pretty diverse cast of characters, both playable ones and NPCs. And these interactions also shape your activity in battle, because certain persona that you summon for your powers get strengthened by the different social links you make with other people. So, starting with Alana this time, was there a favorite character, either playable or different social link, that you had that particularly stuck with you in Persona 3? Because there's a bunch of them. There's over 20.
There's loads of social links. I guess I'll go with playable character first. My favorite playable character in Persona 3 is Akihiko in both story and gameplay perspective because, I mean, I will say this now, post Persona 3, he has become a bit of a scapegoat and kind of a bit of a joke, which really winds me up. But his base character in Persona 3, Persona 4 Arena, where he's basically just a muscle
He and GA.
band.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, definitely. Just kind of, the two. But anyway,
I don't mind Akihiko's new fashion choices with the shirt.
Oh, no.
The no shirt, the hood. All that's great, but his personality has changed for the worse, I agree.
Yeah, definitely. Akihiko is he's he's a year above you, isn't he? So him and Mitsuru are a year above you, and he is kind of the cool, calm boxer who loads of kids admire, but he's really quite chilled, and his kind of presence in the group, he's kind of not like father, I guess, but he's not really somebody I would normally go with in the series. But I think in particular his relationship with Shinji really helps me love him. Kind of the way that he kind of breaks. This is where I'm jumping plot a little bit. Is where him and Shinji basically have some sort of history outside because Seeds, the group that all the characters join, which was started by Mitsuru, Akihiko, and Shinji. I may have got that slightly wrong. They were all involved together, and Shinji got involved. His persona went berserk, and Shinji.
No, you have it right. It was. Shinjiro.
I have it right, don't I?
It was Shinjiro, Akihiko, and
Shinjiro.
Well, no, they all call him Shinji, but his full name's Shinji.
Yeah.
They were all in seas together. They were fighting shadows and trying to save the world together. But then Shinji lost control of his persona and killed an innocent bystander during a mission, which had him leave the group.
Exactly. And Akihiko spent a lot of time trying to get Shinjiro to come back to Seas, and Shinjiro basically has been taking these. I think we'll dive into it later when we talk about, if we do talk about the villains.
Yes, please.
Shinji's. Yes, I'd like to talk about Strega. That he takes these persona-suppressing drugs because he is scared that he'll lose control. And so Akihiko spends a lot of the time. There are points in the plot where he wanders off, and you're just... At this point, I was kind of doing my typical kind of, oh, hang on a minute, it's Liam O'Brien. I don't trust you for a little bit. And then he comes back with Shinji, and basically it kind of kickstarts his development a little bit. I know in P3P, the PSP version of the game, he's obviously romanceable, and a lot of his stuff can't be done until after the 4th of October, which is when Shinjiro dies. I've not summarized myself very well at all. I've completely gone off the ball with Akihiko, because there was something about him that I really liked. I think it was because he was kind of the cool middle ground of the group.
He's a stud.
Yeah,
He's a stud, pretty much.
He's sort of the cool senpai character.
Exactly. And it was quite nice to have that in a group, because I prefer playing as adults generally in RPGs, I guess. But he's as adult as you probably get in the group, and along with Mitsuru, I also really like his lightning affinity. I think I just really like him. I need to replay this game and remind myself.
I agree. Akihiko's really cool. He's useful in battle, and he's like a stabilizing presence in your party. And your comment about adults versus teenagers, I also usually prefer playing as adults over teenagers in RPGs, but I think that in the Persona games, the groups of teenagers are pretty special, or at least exceptions to the rule.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, because sort of the high school setting and the high school life being a big part of the game, I think is basically makes it okay to be spending so much time with virtual high schoolers in a video game. When a lot of the time I get annoyed or frustrated by children and teenagers in RPGs. But in Persona 3, my least favorite character by far is the elementary school kid that joins your team, Ken.
Oh, why is he there?
I don't know.
Well, yeah, I think
his subplot with Akihiko and Shinjiro which you alluded to, Alana, where the woman that Shinjiro killed when his persona went berserk was Ken's mother, and Ken has this deep feeling of revenge. His persona is even called Nemesis, where he's trying to find out who killed his mother. He realized it was Shinjiro. He tries to confront Shinjiro to kill him. The Strega crew runs in and are about to shoot Ken, but Shinjiro dies instead. And Shinjiro's death and Ken's willingness to forgive him and Akihiko getting over it are what are the steps that both of them take to overcome their weaknesses and have their personas literally transform as they transform as humans.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is that subplot it works out to be okay, but it doesn't make Ken any less annoying.
No, I do like the way that Akihiko and Ken have this kind of bond. Ken also has a bond with Kuromaru, so he gets a bit of a buy, but I don't think I didn't use him. I'd never used him. He was the only character I don't think I used in my party once, and
he's a worse healer than Yukari and a worse lightning user than Akihiko.
Exactly,
it's not worth using him.
And I use both of them.
He doesn't even get an evoker animation. I guess that would be crossing the line, really. But
oh yeah, that's very true. But no, I think that overall the kids in this game, and maybe another reason why I prefer 3 more than 4 is because they do have an overall more mature feel to them, I guess.
So Robert, do you have a favorite character in the cast or a favorite subplot that you want to go over a little bit?
I too have quite an affinity towards Akihiko. I think maybe my favorite party member would be Mitsuru, because she's this sort of no-nonsense upperclassman who she's quite intimidating, and it's like, ooh, well, I'd quite like to impress her.
Yeah,
but she's a very good leader. Yeah. It's nice to see the de facto leader of this organization to be a tough and self-serious lady, which you don't often see in this kind of fiction. So I found her to be a very fun character to be around. A lot of my, I don't know if I'd say favorite, but some of my more memorable characters are some of the social links you engage in.
Right.
Particularly Bebe.
Oh yeah, the French foreign exchange student.
Yeah, the one who he uses the language all wrong. So he's constantly addressing you with the honorific sama, which is used for the emperor and god. And he's so enthusiastic about he wants to make his cool designs, and he wants you to try them out and sort of be a friend and kind of a cheerleader to him. I remember him being very memorable. I enjoyed hanging out with him quite a bit. And the older couple who run the elders who run the bookshop as well,
right?
And their story about the tree that was planted, or their son who died, who was a teacher at Yasogami.
No, Gekko-kan.
Is it Yasogami? Oh, Gekko-kan. Yeah.
It's Gekko-kan in Persona 3, Yasogami in Persona 4.
Right.
And it's 2 high schools in Persona 2.
Fake gamer guy.
Yeah. I'm the fakest gamer guy. Don't take any of my fake knowledge as fact. Absolutely not. I like Persona. Well, of course I like Persona. I like Mitsuru a lot as well. For every reason that you said, she's sort of cool and intimidating, but also, but not rude or mean. She's like Hiko. She's just a very cool senpai, no nonsense, wants to get stuff done, but she feels a lot of pressure since she's the scion of a big Zaibatsu or a giant corporation where she's expected to take over. Her social link is dramatic as hell. In the main version of Persona 3, not the female protagonist route, but the original route of Persona 3, the only social links among your playable characters are the women, which you can date and have romances with. There's I think 5. Yeah. There's 5 girls total that you can date, and 3 of them are your party members, Fuka, Mitsuru, and Yukari. But in Mitsuru's social link, she has to deal with an arranged marriage and stand up. And stand up to the people that run her corporation, and also she goes out for ramen with you, and she's never had cheap food before because she's so aristocratic. And so parts of that, even though she's a completely ridiculous character on the surface. I mean, she's super rich, has a motorcycle, she has superpowers, she's like sort of the perfect high school girl kind of stereotype. She's this impossible character that seems very human when you engage with her on her social link. I think she's my favorite female character in the game for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I like how she clashes with Yukari. Because it seemed like a genuine relationship between two girls. Like in high school, two girls that aren't friends maybe will dislike each other for petty reasons and not be able to get along for reasons just because like teenage girls have different kinds of friend relationships than teenage guys do. And so like watching Mitsuru and Yukari be sort of slightly jealous and disliking each other in a way, because like first of all, Yukari blames Mitsuru's corporation for the death of her father, since Yukari's father was a scientist that worked in the Kirijo group. But like the way that when you see them individually, how Mitsuru will be like, "Man, how does Yukari be so stylish and make everything look cute?" And Yukari's like, "Man, why is Mitsuru so perfect?" And them having this petty jealousy at each other that they eventually overcome and become close friends. That seemed a little bit more like a real relationship between two teenage girls than I've seen in a lot of games.
I couldn't really say myself. I wonder if Alana can weigh in on that.
Oh, well, I'm not. I mean, I'm not really the right female to ask, I would say. But
just seeing them in the game reminded me of how my sister would be very catty, like alternatively very catty and very positive about her different female friends in school. And it's like, this feels more like a relationship between two women than a lot of other stuff I've seen in the game.
The way you've described it just kind of reminds me of, I don't know, like being 18 and going to goth clubs and meeting people like that.
Yeah, I think so.
Although, but if I have a favorite playable character, for obvious reasons, it's Koromaru, the Shiba Inu that joins you, who's just the best. He's an excellent video game dog, as we talked about last week.
He's a good boy.
Yeah, he's a good dog. He's a good dog. Jumping back to Yukari and Mitsuru, I suppose they are quite realistic, but what I really like about Yukari is probably my favourite female character in the game, in that she is almost like the anime trope of kind of the stylish popular girl, but actually she is really not that. And even though she's got the obvious insecurity, kind of like I'm outwardly confident but inwardly really not and have lots of problems, she develops really well. And I remember thinking, oh, I don't know whether I'll like her because she's kind of just a bit sporty and a bit like, I don't know, her banter with Junpei kind of, I don't particularly like
rude to Junpei.
She is.
Stupei,
exactly. And, I'm not really a massive fan of Stupei either. But
and quick aside, one reason why I don't love the answer portion of Persona 3, which is the small sort of sequel that's included in the FES version of the game, is like they turn up Yukari's meanness to 11.
They destroy her character pretty much, don't they? Like
she starts out a little rude to Junpei, but just sort of eventually just softening towards everyone in the game in Persona 3, and she is just awful to everyone in the answer portion.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a way of hiding the fact that she misses the protagonist, but it's not very well done at all.
Sorry to interrupt, but it also in Persona 4 Arena, she becomes an actress for the Pink Ranger in Persona in the Persona Universe's version of Power Rangers. So of course I like Yukari. Of course I do.
She gets bonus points for being an archer as well. I've got a soft spot for archers.
Cool.
Mitsuru is, again, she's similar to Akiko. She fills the same role as he does, but she is kind of like the group leader, essentially. I like how, again, this is the same with all the characters. They're like outwardly one thing and inwardly the other. So Persona 3, and again, another reason why I like 3 more than I like 4 is because more of the characters in 3 are outwardly something. They're like anime tropes, but then inwardly, then they're like either the opposite or they have some other big problem that kind of inverts those tropes slightly. I know they're more tropey than perhaps some of the earlier characters in other games, but and especially like less tropey maybe than 4. But Mitsuru in particular, she's easily likable. Like, she's the super smart woman who's really powerful and really cool, but she has a lot to hide from the rest of the group.
She won't even let you walk her home until you're the smartest person in the school.
Yeah, really. It's kind of...
I can't be seen with this dweeb.
No. But she's intimidating, and when I think it's the first time you kind of let on is when you go to the beach with everybody, and the resort her father owns, I believe, and she has to start like mentioning things or bringing things up, or she starts digging up things that she realizes and she comes to terms with is that basically a lot of the game's problems and a lot of the problems that come up are the result of her father and the Kirijo group and other people in the Kirijo group who have started all of the mess, basically, with the Shadows, Hagues, and Ryuji, and Nyx, of course, consequently. Mitsuru's just really cool, really likable. She's kind of like, if you're a teenage boy, a typical teenage boy, and you see Yukari, you're just kind of like, oh yeah, this is a goal kind of thing, which is a sad thing to say, but I really like her. I like the older characters in this game a lot. They're really nice. Like, a nice foundation for the rest of the group. And it's nice to see all the other characters grow into that as well, eventually, into kind of the mature, taking the baton semi off of the originating C's members.
She's student body president, isn't she?
Yes.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah. She kind of... like the way that we've spoken about her, it's kind of made me realize that she's kind of like a recontextualization as like a humanized hero version of kind of the evil student body president that you'd see in manga like Ranma or particularly like Revolutionary Girl Utena.
Right.
Yeah,
but
I know who you mean.
Yeah, but a rare likable and more in-depth version of that archetype.
Yeah, she's like
definitely.
She's like an exaggerated version of an sort of a what you might call an Ojo-sama in one of those manga anime.
Yeah,
where she's just like this perfect student who is wealthy and intelligent and rules the school and is admired by everyone. But instead of being a villain that is opposing the outsider protagonist, she's supportive and nice. She's
like a good version of Biko from Project Eiko, who had like the big she had the big super techno corporation behind her as well. But,
she did.
Right.
That's usually a big negative. It kind of is here, but she overcomes it.
So yeah, we like Mitsuru a lot, and Robert went into talking about a couple of the NPC social links, the old couple and Bebe, the French exchange student. But Alana,
yes.
Do you have a favorite or one or two NPC social links that you talk to?
I have a couple of memorable ones. I mean, I'm not going to go into the death one. I think we'll go into that maybe if we bring up Ryuji, because that's with us.
I have a couple too, but I want you to go first.
Okay, so I'm going to bring in the Persona 2 link, and this is the most I know about Persona 2, and this is the Hermit social link. So you start, I think it's one of the first social links you can actually start, and you get an old game from Junpei called Innocent Sin Online, which is clearly a reference to a previous title we've already discussed. And every Sunday or every holiday you can play Innocent Sin Online and interact with a character called Maya.
And you play Tatsuya, and the other character is Maya, and those are the two main characters of the Persona 2 duology. Right.
In the Japanese version, it's Shin Megami Tensei 1 online. So she's playing. I think she's Lilith, and you're Aleph. I think in the Japanese. So.
Well, I mean, either way, it's a neat reference to old SMT, old Atlas games.
Yeah, definitely. I do really like this one. I think it's really quite cute in that it's one. I don't remember, is there one similar in Persona 4, or is there generally all face to face, aren't they? I think in Persona 4.
Yeah, they're all. I'm trying to think too. There's nothing like this in Persona 4. No, they're all face to face with another character that you know.
Yeah.
That you know for the whole time.
Yeah, I think it's the most unique, I think, in the game, and that you're not talking directly to another character, and I really like the end of it. So as you play further along, you do find out that it's somebody that you do know, and it's the teacher, isn't it? It's one of the teachers at school, if I remember correctly.
It's the homeroom teacher who also
It is the homeroom teacher.
Who also teaches composition, which is basically a word for grammar and language and grammar.
That's right. Yeah.
Like that movie Me and You and Everyone You Know, but without the pooping.
Yeah. So I like that I couldn't figure out, and I didn't figure out for a long time that it was your homeroom teacher. There is some sort of hint towards the end of the social link that I can't quite remember. Unfortunately, you don't. It's probably one of the easier ones to do, and probably one of the less rewarding ones to do. So I think you get like a low level 60 persona at the end of it. Whereas in other ones you can get like much stronger and higher ones. But I think it deserves a mention because one, it refers to the older games, and two, it's more unique. The other one that always sticks out, mainly because I find it quite amusing, is the tower.
The monk.
I never met him. I always wanted to. I could never find him.
I love the monk. Okay, well,
I love.
He's a little hard to find because you need to get one of the dating personas, Yuko, the strength persona, up to level 3 or 4, and then she mentions seeing this weird. Then she mentions seeing a weird monk at a club. And you got to go find the weird monk at a club, and you can't talk to him unless your courage is at, I don't know, rank 4, I think, maybe.
Yeah.
4. So he's one of the hardest to, and then you have to win a mini game to start talking to him. So he's one of the hardest social links to start. But he's also one of my favorites. Let's talk about him.
Yeah. Definitely. It's one of the ones I maxed out, actually, so I'm quite surprised that he was quite difficult. I think I was just determined to be like, I'm a 16-year-old in a club. I just want to break some rules kind of thing. But Mutatsu, I think his name is, so he's like he's a monk. He's a cynical, kind of depressed man.
He's a hard-drinking, hard-smoking monk.
Oh, yeah, he is. Definitely.
Like Swery.
But no, it starts off quite amusing, but actually when you dig down to it, it's, he has a wife and a son who he does really love, and he has like a behavior coping mechanism. I just think it's a really nice, bizarre little social link. It's one of the later ones you can get, isn't it? So you can't get it for quite a while, or I didn't get it until maybe October. I don't think I started it until. I just think it was quite, again, for the same reason that I really like Maya. This one just kind of stands out as unique, whereas all the others are like, oh, this is your school friend. I really like the old couple in the bookshop as well. They're one of my favourites, which we've already talked about. I like all the ones that are outside of school because it's like you're broadening your kind of, not job, but it's like actual proper social aspects. So like you are broadening your horizons as a person, as a teenager, rather than just like, oh, I've got another school friend. Let's go to swimming club. Let's go to art club or cooking club or whatever else.
Let's go hang out with scumbags like Tanaka.
Yeah, let's go.
Tanaka's another good one.
Tanaka is another good one. But Mutatsu, it just sticks out for being quite memorable because he does essentially try to like teach you and basically mocks you. So if you pick like a wrong answer, he will just kind of slay you a little bit. I want to hear why Mike likes it though, because he probably I think you probably got more of a fondness for it than I have. I just remember it for being really unique. But go for it.
It is unique, and I because I obsess over weird mechanics about RPGs. I like Mutatsu and Tanaka particularly because they're the only two Persona links, optional social links that you can do at night, which gives you a lot of opportunity to do them and gives you much more interesting things to do at night. Because maybe we mentioned this earlier, but in Persona, in the flow of the game, there's basically 2 phases or 3 phases of the day. First, you go to school, then you have your afternoon activity, then you have your evening activity. And in the evening, you can go fight demons and shadows, or you can go study, or you can talk to the only 2 night social links, one of which is Mutatsu. So even the Mutatsu one's really convoluted to start, and you have to do like 4 things before you're allowed to meet him. He's one of the easier ones to finish because there are so few things to do at night other than study or fight demons or talk to the old monk in the club. But I really like him. His social link's really convoluted. You alluded to it a bit, Alana, that sometimes he wants you to agree with his extremely cynical, dark worldview. Sometimes he's drunk and thinks you're his son, and the way to get the most points is to play along with that. But you eventually learn that this is an old monk who really misses his estranged wife and son, but also doesn't take his work very seriously. But appreciates that how people gain strength from when he blesses someone's wedding or someone's built home or something. So he's a slightly complicated old monk character, and I think one of the most fun social links in the game. I always recommend hanging out with Yuko 5 times just to unlock the Butatsu social link. Even though I don't think
is she sort of the tanned Yamanba girl?
She's the sporty tanned girl. That's she's the manager.
She's not the delinquent.
No.
Okay.
There's only a delinquent girl in Persona 4.
Oh, I'm mixing them up again.
Yeah, the Moon social link I is a delinquent in Persona 4, but there's no delinquents that you can date in Persona 3.
Okay.
And Yuko's the manager of whatever sports team you pick, but I think it's supposed to be track because in her social link you teach a bunch of kids how to run. So I think the canon choice is track in Persona 3, but that's not important. Let me backtrack a little bit and talk about maybe my least favorite social link. And that's your stupid dweeby friend you meet at the first day of school, Kenji.
I kind of like that one.
Oh, yeah, I kind of like.
I don't like this guy. He's just
he's unlikable, but
he's just really annoying and has a crush on his teacher and gets sad when he tries to ask your teacher out, but she's engaged. It's like, come on, dude. This is just.
Oh yeah.
Maybe I'm remembering it wrong. Doesn't she take advantage of him?
A little bit. She sort of leads him on.
She sort
of leads him on a little bit. But I mean, it takes like 5 days of hanging out with him just before he asks her out, and then it gives the impression that the teacher kind of likes the attention, but isn't taking it seriously at all. And Kenji's just crushed when he learns that she's engaged to an adult. But I just found him so annoying and frustrating. It's like, man, why can't I hang out with Akihiko or Shinjiro or walk Kuramaru instead of to hang out with this idiot?
You can hang out with Koromaru. You don't need a social link for Koromaru.
That's true. Actually, you can take him for walks, but only in the Fest version, and he's a social link in the female protagonist route in Persona 3 Portable.
Yeah, I don't want to date anybody. I just want to walk the dog, to be honest. So
dating Akihiko and Shinjiro is fun in that game, but I don't like the Ken social link in that one. The one other social link, the NPC social link I want to talk about is the Sun social link, which is another one that's a little convoluted to find. You have to get the.
Oh yeah, this one is.
Yeah, you have to get the Hanged Man social link up to a certain level, and that's the little girl, and then you meet this guy in the park who has a terminal disease and he's dying. And every time you talk to him, you can only do it on Sundays, so it's a little tricky to finish it if you unlock it too late. He basically is coming to terms with his own mortality and writing an extremely dark children's picture book. That's interesting to hear about, but it's one of the most serious and most interesting conversations that you have in the game. The guy's name is Kamiki. I just had to look it up because I couldn't remember it. But I really like the Sun Persona social link.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about that one. That one's really sad. I really like the little girl social link as well. So I think I tied the two together. But yeah, it was really horrible. Am I right in thinking that he's not there on the last one, and that's how it kind of ends, and that you assume that he's died, or somebody's there and they tell you that he's died?
In the epilogue, if you go there, you meet his mother, and his mother.
That's right.
And his mother thanks you for being such a good friend to him, and it turns out he gets his book published, and his book gets mentioned by a couple characters in Persona 4.
Oh,
okay.
No.
Yeah,
I
think Kanji mentions reading it. If I want.
Oh.
I'd have to double check with that though.
That was another one I maxed out. I think I did Hermit and then used Sunday to do Sun, so it felt quite nicely.
That's a good plan. Both of those are really good ones.
Yeah.
So we've really exhausted talking about most of the major characters in Persona 3.
We haven't quite talked about the villains yet.
We haven't talked about Tartarus yet.
We have not talked about Tartarus.
So
a
lot of people didn't like it, but
I have a little bit of problem. I have a bit of a problem with how it's implemented gameplay-wise, but I like the concept of it in the story in general. Let's take a step back. The Dark Hour, which we've talked about, which we've mentioned, is a special time that's an hour stuck in between midnight and 12:01, which only some people experience. When the Dark Hour happens, the entire world is tinted green, and monsters called shadows prowl around, and any human that's awake during the dark hour becomes a coffin that
rules.
That just stands there, just placed there. It's a pretty dark, gothic, cool look, the Dark Hour. But some people that are, some level of woke, do not turn into coffins during the Dark Hour, and have the ability to either fight or be defeated by shadows. And the main characters of the game all have that power, and eventually use these devices called evokers, which resemble guns that you shoot yourself with.
Or a collar.
Yeah, or a collar if it's an evoker for dogs. That they people that are woke can use evokers to unleash their persona, which is a demon-like being that can fight shadows. And of course, all of the main cast can use personas, and they try to stop the Shadow Dark Hour phenomenon by going to Tartarus, which is an extremely ominous, creepy, gigantic tower that replaces the location of Gekkoukan High School during the Dark Hour. So throughout the game, you spend your evenings at the player's direction, going up Tartarus and fighting shadows there, and getting to certain breakpoints in Tartarus to try to discover the mystery of it. And on every full moon, which is every 28 or 29 days, there's a giant shadow that attacks the city as part of the story, and the player mandatorily has to go and confront that shadow. So exploring Tartarus happens at the player's own direction, but you should do it at least a little bit so you're strong enough to fight the story bosses as they happen once a month. My problem with Tartarus isn't what it is or how it fits into the story, because you don't really understand its story role until the very end of the game. It's very much a mystery for the first 70% of the story or so. Instead of having dungeons attached to plot points or attached to characters like in Persona 4, Tartarus is just sort of an ever-present thing that's there, and your teammates encourage you on the evenings. Hey, let's go explore Tartarus tonight. Hey, let's go train in Tartarus tonight. But you don't really have a reason for doing so. You don't have a reason grounded in the story or gameplay to do so until.
Well, you're trying to figure out what it is.
Yeah, but yeah. I sort of wish there was, if not more explanation, at least more of a thrust to Tartarus that I think is a weakness of Persona 3.
I liked it.
Yeah.
Sorry, Alana, you go ahead.
No, it's fine. So yeah, I kind of like it. I mean, I think if we're going to talk about it from a dungeon perspective, yes, I do prefer slightly the dungeons in Persona 4 because they are more varied. They fit the story like you've suggested. Like, they fit the individual arcs. But Persona 3's Tartarus is kind of an overbearing figure in the entire game, and you are trying to uncover it throughout the course of the game, and the further up you get, the weirder it gets. I remember, like, the disco floors, which must be, like, 150 for, like, 200, yeah. And they're just, like, completely acid, like, psychedelic. But I do really like the Tartarus, and I like how kind of slowly you uncover it. Like, it is a strange, like, it's pretty basic in terms of what it is. Like, it's just the school. It's the school and the Dark Hour. It's a massive tower. But the Kojiro group, whatever, they've stuck it there, or it's come out of something that they've done.
There was an experiment in the space where the high school is now by a team sponsored by Mitsuru's grandfather.
Yeah.
And it's implied, but not said outright, that one of the demons from Persona 2, Nyarlathotep, was influencing Mitsuru's grandfather into doing these experiments. But that's not 100% nailed down. It's just implied. And so the whole weird experiment set loose all of the giant shadow monsters that you fight every full moon, and after the experiment failed and there was an explosion and Yukari's father died, then the Dark Hour started happening and Tartarus would rise every day at midnight, replacing the high school. And you're right. I don't mind what it is or how it sort of looms over the entire story. I just think its implementation of when and how you explore it versus having personalized dungeons isn't as... I don't love that part of it. And it contributes to why I ultimately like Persona 4 more than 3.
When we went off on our brief Sting tangent, when we recorded our Psych and Densets episode, I expressed my love of the game Baroque. So any game that has a sort of mysterious and spooky tower for you to ascend, I have a soft spot for. So Tartarus takes a lot of boxes for me.
You're also a big East fan, aren't you?
I am, yeah.
Oh,
the Tower of Charm is just amazing.
It is cool. Oh, there you go then.
So your progress through Tartarus it's basically gated depending on where you are in the plot. Like you can only get so far in each, I'd say, month or so. But each time you access a new area, I mean, you're given this new biome. Like, for example, like Alana mentioned, the disco floors, which are my personal favorite. But each time you go up a floor, another individual track on the song comes in, and eventually this sort of minimalist kind of industrial ambient track sort of kind of booms into like this very kind of dramatic feeling, sort of epic the higher that you get, and that flicked a switch in my brain somewhere that made ascending very pleasurable.
It's also cool that your support character Fuka lets you change the music at your own if you want. So and the music that she has comes from Persona 1 and 2.
Oh, really? What is this?
What
is this in Fez or?
No, it's in Fez and portable, but not the original. I think you have to.
Press,
You press square when you're exploring Tartarus, which is the call Fuka button, and mention you want to change the music, and one of them is a very nice remix of Maya's theme from Persona 2. So I sometimes went through the Tartarus playing that.
I never played Fez, and I only got halfway through Portable, so
Fuka's a techie girl, and her persona is sort of like a control panel that she helps you explore Tartarus and improves your mapping and stuff as you go through. So it's pretty cool that she can play DJ a little bit and change the stuff.
Pretty much.
And
I love that.
Speaking of the music, I think Persona 3's soundtrack is a little unlike any other RPG I had played at that time.
Oh yeah.
I mean, how many other RPGs before then incorporate pop and hip hop and weird Japanese English into the soundtrack than that? I mean, maybe you have a good counterexample, but I certainly can't think of one.
I know that there's another example, and I can't think of it off the top of my head. But I was.
I mean, to me, the signature Persona 3 song is the main battle track.
Baby. Mommy's not here. Gonna fight all night.
That's a very brassy rap by what's his name?
Is that Lotus Juice?
Lotus Juice, yeah. A really brassy hook, fun bass heavy beat with Lotus Juice rapping nonsense over it. It's great. It's great. It's entertaining to listen to either on its own and in battle. And I can't think of any other RPG that had a key track like that in it. It was a bit of a shock to me, and I kind of love it.
It was. You can see its influence now. I mean, I guess the most obvious, like Xenoblade Chronicles X, but also the Final Fantasy 13 and its sequels. They started introducing the vocal tracks then, so it's something that we're seeing more and more of. But
vocal tracks, sure, but
vocal tracks just like when you're walking around town or fighting. That wasn't really seen before.
I mean, just energetic hip hop, and weird Japanese hip hop as a key battle track is something totally new to me, and a lot of very pleasant pop vocal tracks are most of the town music, and a lot of those are great too. But Persona 3's soundtrack is very eclectic and fun, and like you said, influential. I totally agree. I like it a lot.
It's fitting, isn't it, for a kind of off port? It's a port island, and sometimes it's a little bit, it's not like walking around any city or any like port. There's quiet areas, there's areas that are graffitied up, there are posters. You've got, like, Persona 3 is a nice soundtrack to listen to when you're walking through a really busy city, I think. I really like the particular track that always sticks in my mind is the music that plays in the dorm. I think it's Iwatodai Station.
I love that piece.
I love it. It's probably my favorite piece of the game. Yeah. There are some really cool, I really particularly like the final boss theme as well. I mean, it's a really cool remix of the Velvet Room theme
Right.
with some nice choir in it.
I think it's called Ballad
the
for
Battle for Everyone's Souls. Yeah.
And they also incorporate the opening one of the opening tracks. Shoot, why can't I think?
Burn My Dread?
Yeah, Burn My Dread into the battle track as well. A different version of Burn My Dread is the opening cutscene song in Fess.
I like that.
Persona 3, but in Fess.
With some Lotus Juice rapping as well.
Indeed.
More Lotus Juice.
They change a couple of the tracks between vanilla Persona 3 and Fess and the girls' route in Persona 3 Portable. And one of my favorite pop tracks in it is the day-to-day school song in the girl route. It's called Way of Life, and it's so pretty and cute, and it replaces one of the pop tracks that you hear at school all the time. So that was a pleasant change when I replayed the game on Portable. But the whole soundtrack is super interesting and definitely worth listening to, even if you don't want to play Persona 3 for 80 hours.
Yeah, I like how they continue the theme. So 3 is mostly hip-hop, 4 is probably more pop, and 5 is acid jazz, so you can't really go wrong.
I can vibe with that.
I can vibe with that.
And quick aside to a different Persona spin-off, Persona Q, the dungeon crawler 3DS game, which is I think the only Persona game that's out on a Nintendo system.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, it is.
At the very beginning, you choose whether you want to have Persona 3 as the main team or Persona 4 as the main team. And they all join you eventually, but you have to pick one at the beginning. And depending on which one you pick, you get a different remix of the battle theme as you play through the whole game. And
really? Okay.
Yeah. The song is called Light the Fire in the Night, I think. I might be getting one of the prepositions wrong on that. But the P3 remix of it is a little bit harsher, with more guitar and sort of a sort of a heavier drum in it. Lotus Juice raps in both versions, but but the hook is a little harsher and darker and has the Burn My Dread vocalist on it. And the Persona 4 version has more brass, is a little bit poppier and peppier, and has the opening video's Persona 4 main vocalist on it. And it's really fun listening to those two versions of Light My Fire Up in the Night, and just because each of them try to convey the tone of Persona 3 versus Persona 4, and it's just great.
I haven't played Q yet.
Games.
No, neither have I.
Q gets rough, especially towards the end, and the characterization for both the P3 cast and the P4 cast is weak.
That's what's turning me off.
As a dungeon crawler, it's all right. And I, even though it got challenging, because I had never played an Etrian Odyssey game before, it was a bit of a struggle getting through the last 30% of that game or so. But I did finish it, and I really liked the music and a lot of the atmosphere of that game. So maybe we should talk about Persona 3 some more.
That's all right. We were going to branch off to the villains, weren't we? So we started on Tartarus. Right. Then we should go to Strega, so I think we will go with that. I think Robert seems to voice some interest in Strega.
I think Strega is a very, very smart move. When you have a story with these heroes that have these special powers and can move around at night, it only stands to reason that there should be, a group with the same or similar powers, but with a different set of ideals. And Borscht is walking on the keyboard. Hopefully he's not going to disconnect us. Okay, he's fine.
Again,
sorry, folks.
Regular podcasters may know this. Borscht is his cat.
So it's coming back from that. It's fun to see this group that they're using their powers for no good. They've kind of got kind of like hedonism as well as nihilism, combining with their own angst and understanding of this power that they're wielding, and it's not something that's really seen in the series. I mean, the earlier Persona games, they had some villains who were wielding personas, but it wasn't really talked about in the same way that it's talked about with Strega and Persona 3, and it wasn't really brought back for 4. So, well, yeah, I mean, that was me very ineloquently talking about why I think Strega are interesting.
I like them as well.
They are interesting. They feel a little out of place at first. Like, what are these guys doing? They're
yeah.
at first they oppose you because they think you're trying to eliminate the Dark Hour and eliminate all Persona powers, and they like using their powers for hedonistic or nihilistic reasons. So you fight them a couple times. It's 3 teenagers, one of whom is shirtless fake Jesus, and the other 2 who are one's dressed as a lolly goth girl, and the other guy just holds a grenade for no reason all the time.
Jin.
Yeah, I couldn't remember all their names, but then it takes a bit of a turn when you defeat all of the full moon monsters, and the stakes of the story change a little bit. They decide to start welcoming the end of the world that's impending, and become these cultist leaders, which we talked about a little bit before. I think they're interesting villains. I wish they were a little bit more present, because you only see them once a month, which is like once every 8 hours or so. And it's
you don't even really they don't even really become antagonists until maybe halfway through either.
Yeah.
So, but they're interesting characters, and I don't dislike their role in the story.
Perhaps the only one who gets perhaps more attention is Chidori, and that is by ways of Junpei and his relationship with her.
Yeah,
which
we haven't really talked about Junpei yet, and that's his major subplot.
Yeah, but then I say I like Strager a lot. I like the way that they almost do a kind of Death Note, in that they build up an entire cult digitally, don't they? They do it online. A lot of their work is done online, I believe, and they're also, what we didn't mention is that they're artificial Persona users, so they are products of the Kirijo group. The drugs that they're given is the same drugs that Shinjiro gets, and is supplied by Shuji Akutsuki, who also, I believe, works for... yes, he does. Oh, yeah, he's the director of Gekkoukan High School. Yeah, that's right. He's the advisor.
He's the advisor to the C's group for most of the game, until he takes a bit of a character turn around the 3/4 mark.
I remember thinking he was shady the whole way through, and then remember getting excited when he was shady.
Don't trust those puns.
Oh no, yeah, pretty much. So they set up a lot of the issues. Like you said, I think the first time they pop up, really, the most important time they pop up is when you capture Chidori, and then they react by trying to get Ken and Shinjiro to basically turn on each other. And then they sort of kind of pop up a little bit more on and on from there. They kind of disappear after that, and then reappear in the secret month of January, where they basically are waiting for you at the top of the tower. The two remaining members, because Chidori is hospitalized or dead at this point. So I think the minute they turned up, I knew that when somebody who turns up, like, who looks a little bit like Jesus, or like the supposed image of Jesus turns up, it's just always a little bit like, sure, something's going to go wrong, or I'm sure something is not right about this. And like, compared to this is where I'm going to sound like a terrible person. Compared to Persona 4, I cannot stand the villain of Persona 4, and I really dislike that twist. I really do not like it.
I don't like him, but I like the twist and what it's trying to accomplish. So we're going to agree to disagree on this one.
I think there's a little bit too much of like evil for the sake of being evil in P4 that I didn't find as compelling as I did some of the previous villains. But I don't think he's bad per se. I mean, he has an antisocial personality disorder, and when the main villain of Persona 4 was talking about the candidates for Persona powers, she mentioned that he was full of emptiness, and like that's one of the things you read about serial killers, that they can't feel anything unless they're killing or causing chaos. So it's, I mean, the main villain of Persona 4 is a sick bastard serial killer. And who manages to hide gets
for most of the game. I don't buy the redemption. He gets imprisoned, and then sends a message to give you a clue for who the villain is, and that's the end of Persona 4. His redemption arc, quote unquote, in the later Persona games, I don't buy 1%. But
side games don't exist.
I have a lot of affection for Persona 4 Arena in particular. Well, Persona Q and Persona 4 Arena, but I'm not
play excellently.
I'm not going to defend the story stuff that they do.
The fighting games are really fun. They do play really well.
I really, really like the fighting games. And even the reinterpretations of the Persona 3 cast, with older Koromaru wearing a hoodie, and Mitsuru in that fetching cat suit and mink coat, and Yukari as the Pink Ranger, and Junpei as a baseball coach. Yeah, he's a little league coach. It's like I am 100% on board with all of it.
No, I think Strega are a stronger antagonist group overall. Like Robert said, they're basically the opposite of you. So they don't want to lose the Dark Hour. They're using it for their own benefit, and they just want to do something different than you. Basically, they're a good group for opposition. Here, borscht.
Yes, that was him.
He wants attention a little bit.
Yeah, he's sitting here and staring at me.
But I do like the way that they go along with the kind of Ryuji's. So Ryuji is a kid who turns up sort of midway through November. He's just a transfer student. I like the way that they go along with his kind of, not his idea, but like the revival of Nyx, basically. I like the way that they use that for their own personal gain. Or, like, just for the hell of it, almost.
Also, it's an interesting thing, both in Persona 3 and Persona 4, your protagonist is mostly silent, but does say things in battle. But the voice actor for the protagonist ends up being a traitor/villain.
Every time.
At least in those two cases. I don't know if it's going to be like that in Persona 5, but it's an interesting choice. But the Ryuji character is really fascinating because for the first 60% of the game or so, you're periodically visited by a mysterious child in striped pajamas.
Pharos.
And he just is he's a manifestation of one of the hidden things in the protagonist. And then when you defeat all of the full moon bosses, he gains a full human form, and that's Ryuji. And it's unclear at first, both to the player and to Ryuji himself, that Ryuji is a harbinger of the goddess of night from Greek myth, Nyx, who is a representation of humanity's you could say sense of nihilism or the humanity's will of self-destruction.
She's kind of like a supernatural force of nature here. She is
in Greek myth as well. I mean, Nyx isn't like throned gods or goddesses. She's like from Hesiod. What is it called? Hesiod from Theogony. She's just a force that brings life together, like chaos and Erebos and the non-Cupid version of Eros. So like Nyx is a representation of sort of emptiness, and is the consort of either Chaos or Erebos, I forget which. But yeah, it's a representation, like Nyx. The apocalypse that's happening in Persona 3 is Nyx descending on the world and ending humanity because they I think some interpretation of humanity wanting to die. Am I misremembering that?
No, I think that's right.
That's pretty much right, I think.
And because in Persona,
it's not really Nyx's fault, and it's definitely not Ryuji's fault, which makes it such an interesting climax.
And Ryuji is if anything, a depressed apologetic harbinger when you speak to him on December 3rd, and then he comes back on December 31st, and the player makes a choice whether to either let the world end or fight the end of the world, and you get one guess as to which is the true ending.
It's funny that they let you choose.
Yeah. But I think it's an interesting choice that the developers made to have a character like Ryuji, who's this unwilling harbinger of the end of the world, and Strega as a group that welcomes the end of the world. It makes for a very dark, confusing, interesting last several hours of gameplay. And that when you talk to Ryuji, that's also when you find the true purpose of Tartarus. Tartarus is where Nyx will first come down, and to confront Nyx, you have to get to the very top of Tartarus before January. What is it, 29th or 30th? I forget the exact date. 31st?
It might be 31st. Yeah, I think it's 31st.
Okay, they don't do it by full moons anymore by then.
No.
But yeah, it makes for a really cool end game, and if you're not prepared for that final fight, you can get wrecked pretty hard.
You really can. It's a really long one if you're not. Even if you are prepared, it's really long.
He goes through 13 forms for the first 13 Arcana, ending on
Yeah.
death.
Yeah, he does. It probably, even if you're fully leveled up, it's probably going to take you half an hour, like 40 minutes.
It's very cinematic.
You really got to
It
be
is
level 75 or so. Which is a lot of levels. That's a lot of time in Tartarus.
That is a lot of time in Tartarus. It's really, I like.
Yeah. Or if you find Monad, the secret room in Tartarus, which happens if you defeat the wandering death boss, then enemies give just stupid amounts of experience in Monad. That helps a lot to getting to the end. But it can be a pretty rough end game.
Yeah, it can be. It's really good. I do like Nyx. I think what we meant, like maybe briefly touched on, is that Nyx is basically the characters are responsible for reviving Nyx. So the 12 shadows in the night that you've been killing are all separate parts of Nyx.
Right.
And so as you've killed them all, you've basically released the seal on death, which is why Ryuji pops up after the final social link with Faros. And so he is.
Faros is a social link that happens naturally throughout the game. You don't have to seek him.
He's the death one. So he happens once a month, I think, or at least a little bit more frequently than that. But yeah, once you've killed all 12 of the Moon Persona, then your Nyx is basically coming down. And originally, the Karuja group, the Mitsuru's grandfather wanted Nyx and they embraced the kind of death that she was going to bring. And so this is why Yukari's father died, because he wanted to stop that, and that's why Nyx split into 12 or 13 different shadows. So I thought...
And Ikutsuki, the advisor of the group, is guiding the heroes to defeat all these shadows and revive Nyx, when really what Yukari's father wanted is to ignore those shadows so that Nyx never arrives. And Ikutsuki, you find out Ikutsuki was really working for the evil all along. In where is it? I think November or maybe late October.
Yeah.
The full moon shadows are still sucking out souls, though, huh? So, I mean...
Yeah, they are.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah, there's the whole apathy...
They're the cause of apathy syndrome.
Yeah, apathy syndrome is, from the beginning of the game through to the end, you find random people that are sort of just wandering like empty husks around town. And that's because those were people that have persona potential, got caught in the dark hour, and then had their souls eaten by shadows.
I like how in the first part of the game, it's like maybe one person per night that you see, and then by the end, it's pretty much, the whole town.
There's multiple people in every space you can walk to that have apathy syndrome.
Yeah.
Oof, Persona 3 is a hell of a thing, isn't it?
Heavy.
Now, man, we recorded a Mana series podcast earlier. That's probably going to be the week after this one, and recording that just made me want to play Seiken Densetsu 3 again. And this thing, and talking about Persona 3 with you guys has me wanting to fire up the PSP and probably replay the girl route on that, because, man, Persona 3 it's a long, involved, dense game, but it is really satisfying and fun.
Yeah.
I say that, and I like Persona 4 more, but Persona 3 is awesome, and I don't want to take anything away from it.
Well said.
So,
is that it?
That was the thing. I think we're hitting.
That's
it.
it.
Are there any final points that we want to address before we start our housekeeping and say our goodbyes?
I think we've hit everything I wanted to talk about.
We've hit a lot of character stuff, some plot and villain stuff. We've hit music.
Yeah, we have.
We've done background.
We talked about Good Boys.
Yep.
Yes.
It's a hell of a
He's a hell of a dog. It's a hell of a game.
Definitely worth experiencing, I think.
Persona 3. Good boys, bad people. So, that was our Persona 3 episode of Retro Encounter. Thank you so much for suffering along with us for this hour and a half plus, listeners. Next week we are. I think that's how I'm going to schedule it. Next week we're going to have our special Mana series episode, which Robert, Derek, and I talked at length about all of those delightful games.
I'm so jealous. I need to play all of them.
They are almost all really good. At least the ones made up to the year 2000.
Well, yeah, it's been bad longer than it's been good.
It's
but
been
those
bad longer
First
than
3
it's been
games.
That's fair. Yeah. Okay. From 91 to 2000, you are great. Those 4 games.
Good.
Let's give Legend of Mana some credit.
You're right. Yeah,
Legend of Mana does deserve credit. Yeah, and Switch port. If the Switch port comes here, please do it.
The Switch port came up in the conversation, definitely. So
Good.
look forward to that next week. And later this month, we are going to have 2 episodes about Tales of the Abyss, the fan favorite Tales of game, which I am in the middle of playing right now, not this moment, but in my free time. And so I'm looking forward to talking about that with Alana and Steph as well, right? Right.
Yeah. Right.
So that'll be a good time. And I don't think it's time to announce the May game yet, even though it's in its planning stage. So we'll wait on that a little bit. So starting with Robert, can you tell us how listeners can reach you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter at MissAnthroBob, and I'm always willing to talk about Persona and SMT. So hit me up.
And you're also Townscar Marty on the boards, and you have...
That's right.
And you have a delightful podcast with your friend Alva called Misanthroplay.
Yes.
Oh, you're too kind.
Oh,
yes.
I don't mind.
Shucks.
I don't mind people plugging their stuff. Come on.
Yeah, check out our podcast, Misanthroplay. By the time you hear this episode, we're going to have an episode on a myriad of Zelda clones, both good and bad. So.
Oh,
Ooh,
nice.
Do you talk about 3D Dot Game Heroes?
Yes, we do.
Yes.
Oh, lovely.
That's a fun game. I like
Yeah.
that thing.
So check that out, folks.
Right on. And Alana, same question for you.
So I'm Diving Falcons on the boards, or I'm on at Alana Hagues on Twitter, although I'm planning on going on a bit of a blackout because Persona 5's out, so I already know a couple of spoilers. I don't want to know anymore. Don't talk to me about Persona 5.
Don't add us.
Yeah, okay.
I
am in a very similar boat to you, because I am going to be dropping everything else when Persona 5 hits, and I know some spoilers I don't need to know anymore.
Yeah, we've discussed the ones we know, and luckily they match up, so it's fine.
We haven't ruined each other on Persona 5.
Yeah.
Alright, and I am at The Real Monsoon on Twitter, and I also have a backup Twitter where I talk about Japanese superheroes a lot, called at Evoker for Dogs, which is a Persona 3
Poignant.
a Persona 3 inspired title, I should mention. And I'm also Monsoon on the forums. So
you've got a blog with some nice Persona 3 entries that would complement this quite nicely.
I guess that's true. Yeah, I have a blog that's therealmonsoon.blogspot.com, which has a lot of Persona articles, a few more Japanese superhero articles. I think I wrote about anime basketball once. That's still like my #1 post for people in the Philippines.
What specific?
No, seriously.
Great.
It's my most
Slam Dunk or Kuroko?
Okay. Oh god. It's those are 2 of my favorite series ever. Slam Dunk is my #1 favorite manga of all time, and the post.
Oh wow.
And the post is who would win in a match between Shohoku High School and Suzerain High School from Kuroko. And it's
That's great.
And somehow it's my #1 most viewed post, and it gets like 15 views in the Philippines every month. I still don't understand that.
You'll have to write about Dear Boys next.
Yes.
I'm actually pretty excited. The authors of both of those series have very good sports manga out right now. One about wheelchair basketball, and one about an autistic.
Oh wow!
And one about an autistic kid that is brilliant at golf. But anyway, that's neither here
Oh
nor
my
there.
god.
I mean, you want to talk about sports manga? I mean, I could do a whole month of podcasts just about those. So anyway, I don't know how much of that I'll cut out. But anyway, thank you very much, listeners, for putting up with us all this time. Good night and good luck.
忘れない優しい微笑み悲しさ隠した瞳を願うこと辛くても立ち向かう勇気君にもらっただからゆくれ夢の中目覚めたらまた会えるよ遠い記憶胸に秘め歌う儚くたゆたう世界を 覚えている忘れないいつまでも決して Until my life is exhausted一度君に会えると信じ一人迷い雨の